In this video, we'll be painting up Victor Messa, who in the hell is Victor Messa? I often like to start my painting videos with a bit of lore, but instead I'm going to give a little bit of a rant. Infinity's lore has a serious lack of stories about individuals in their universe. Most of Infinity's lore is available with the printed books, and that's a great way to get more information about their worlds and get a macro view of their universe, but it still reads like a treatise or historical document. It's hard to find many stories on specific characters. Yes, there are the comics and a new novel, but compared to other companies, it's hard to say what makes individuals in the Infinity universe special. Many have their justified complaints about GW and 40k. I find 40k takes up too much space for storage, and it's too expensive to keep up with the constantly evolving rules of the game when I only have the time to play a couple of times a year. But I still love the lore, and I will pick up audiobooks to listen to it. Even though convoluted, there are so many fun character stories. There are stories for any taste, but my preference has always been for the Guard and other regular humans. Commissar Gaunt and Caiaphas Cain are two distinctly different takes on the role of a commissar, both having a more forgiving nature for the men under their command than the more common image of 40k commissars, but both for very different reasons. Although I don't collect or play 40k, this lore still keeps my interest, and I find myself checking the store fairly regularly to see if there is something that might draw me back. Weird also has some wonderful character stories for their game Malifaux. The rulebooks are filled with short adventures that have the many characters running across one another and help define who they are in the story as well as on the tabletop. The game itself is so very story-driven and flavorful. It was thanks to this game's character lore that pulled me into it when I felt the 40k fatigue. Between games, I always looked forward to listening to the Breachside broadcast for more stories about the wonderful and weird characters, and then finding each individual character's rules reflect the lore so well. Nearing the end of 2nd edition, there was a massive release of miniatures and upgrades that caused balance issues, and with every character having their own unique rules meant that whenever you played against a crew for the first time, there were a plethora of gotcha moments that left a bad taste in the mouth. Then, when the game switched to 3rd edition with crews now formed from keywords more than from faction, although a good way to fix the issues that reared their head in 2nd edition, it made a sizable selection of my models almost obsolete from the crews I was running. At this point, I had difficulty finding games, and wanted a game with the depth of Malifaux, but with more uniform rules that all players use rather than character-specific rules, and also had beautiful miniatures that I wanted to paint. This led me to Infinity, and it has checked all the boxes I wanted, except one. Character lore that gets me excited about the game. Infinity is a unique and rewarding experience on the tabletop, with most losses down to poor decision making and a few key moments left up to the roll of the dice. It is a pretty complex political universe with in-depth faction information, nation relationships, and military capabilities, but it lacks a lot of short story fiction that can not only help build the lore, but get players excited for the game. Okay, so why am I saying all of this in what started out as a Victor Messa painting video? Well, as I had stated, I like to start videos with a very short bit of lore for the models I paint. Except when I look for anything about Victor Messa, there's nothing. Looking at the Corvus Belli store page, there is usually a little information about characters, but there's nothing for Victor. Looking at the wiki, we find all of his rules, some pictures of models, but nothing for his background. Doing a Google search for any lore or stories about Victor Messa also comes up short. The only information I was able to find was a little blurb from the ITS Season 10 campaign that mentions him, and I only found this on the California War Cause blog Infinity Chain of Command. This has stretched me to having little to no interest in playing the Infinity role-playing game, although it has a lot of information about life in the human sphere and how the different nations function and an awesome character creation system. It still lacks the short stories and adventures that inspire the storytelling aspect of role-playing games. Whereas the Malifaux RPG Through the Breach is so easy to jump into for storytellers, as there are so many stories that give inspiration to the adventures and dangers of living in its world. This lack of interesting character lore is what I find the most disappointing aspect of the Infinity universe. Without knowing what a character's first-hand experiences are, it makes it hard to connect to the universe. So when Defiance was on Kickstarter with an actual story campaign, it had me pledging within the first few days. I think this was the same for many other Infinity players as well. Infinity does such a great job of making a tactical, thought-provoking game, but misses the story around the engagements that could make them that much more compelling and help build a narrative in the player's mind. Conversely, Tag Raid looks like a really fun game, but it adds next to nothing in terms of story to the Infinity universe, and although was successful, has nowhere near the hype of Defiance. There are of course other factors in this, such as the flavour of the game and possible Kickstarter burnout from the previous Defiance campaign, but it certainly didn't seem to ignite the imagination excitement that Defiance did. When I was looking over the limited lore of Ada Swanson, there were hints that the Specular agent was so successful at impersonating her that she herself starts to forget that she is Shasvasti until the EI begins communicating with her directly. This is a fantastic concept to explore in a character story from the point of view of Ada Swanson. Having her being at odds with her own feelings of alignment and how she justifies what she does while slipping into the two sides of her personality. I think this would make for a great read. Instead, we get these hints as a quick overview of the character that feels very distant and lacks any personality. Now, there could very well be some stories like this found in the lore of the expansion books, but where I might look to find these stories about specific characters is a mystery to me. Most seem to deal in the wider history, political relations of the nations, and struggles against the ever-encroaching combined army. With more named characters appearing all over the factions of Infinity, I think it would be a great opportunity to flesh out and create relatable stories told from the first-person perspective of these people that make up the human sphere. And with them, pique the interest of gamers who want to dip their toes into the universe of Infinity. I don't think I am alone in thinking that short personal stories set in a fantasy universe are far more engaging than encyclopedic information on the makeup of said universe. So as I wrote this script for this video, I got to thinking it's easy to complain about what you don't like about something, but it's far more constructive to actually try and do something about it. So instead of talking about how I painted Victor Messa, it's a very similar process to what I've done in all my other videos. Instead, you can actually watch my painting of him while listening to my very own 100% unofficial short story about Victor Messa. So I hope you enjoy it. Please bear in mind I am not a writer. I do not consider this story to be very good, and if I'm to be completely honest, I don't really want to publish it online. But I'm going to put it out there anyway and see if you enjoy it. Thanks very much. Victor cuts the connection from the Yu-Ching vessel Dominant Spirit. Without a single firewall preventing his access or security protocol from detecting his raid, Victor managed to steal highly classified military data, which is going to fetch a high price to the right buyer. He spins in his chair, a grin spreading across his face, like stealing candy from a baby. But who to sell to? Pan-Oceania would pay handsomely, but it would probably not be worth the attention it would pull. Perhaps the JSA? They are pretty tight-lipped and despise Yu Jing more than anyone else, but they don't carry the creds that other nations do. Either way, it's going to be a good payday. Time to celebrate. Victor was plying his trade on Tunguska, a spacecraft large enough to house an entire nation. One of 3 that makes up the Nomad fleet. This was where the best money and equipment was, and a wonderful crime syndicate to fence his ill-gotten gains. Whenever getting a big score, Victor liked to celebrate, and he would only drink the best. Bakunin speed spirits. All the benefits of drowning your sorrows with none of the hangover the next morning, no matter how much you drank. It just cost a pretty penny, and so was reserved for special occasions, such as this. As Victor knocked back a second glass and wiped his chin with the back of his hand, he noticed the girl next to him looking intently at him. She had a mischievous grin, and her eyes were wide, boring right into him. He didn't like strangers noticing him, and she was taking significant notice, and it put him instantly on the defensive. What? He knows what you did. She nods towards a dark corner of the bar. Not being a foolish man, Victor makes a nuanced glance toward the corner. Damn it. How did he miss him? Well, the Nomad ship had all sorts from the various nations of the human sphere visiting on business, and he probably thought nothing of it, but he should have known better than to spend any time in a place shared with anyone from Yu Qing. That isn't any regular Yu Qing citizen, you know. That is an Imperial agent. And I think he has you pegged. I think you have me mistaken for someone else. She leans in close to his ear and whispers, Dominant spirit, then walks away out the door without looking back. Victor's head started to spin. His palms were sweating, and the alcohol hadn't helped. He had grown accustomed to never being caught. His bubble of anonymity had just been burst, and it felt like everyone in the room knew what he had done. There's no way that anyone traced his cyber attack back to him. He was very careful of that. He takes a moment to convince himself that everything is fine. But his paranoia knew better. He can't trust the woman. But even without looking, he knows that Yu Qing bastard is watching him. He downs the last of his drink. Damn it! He makes a move for the door to catch up to her and get away from everyone in the bar. As he exits the establishment, the street outside is bustling. He looks around and cannot see her. Turning back, he sees the Yu Jing agent is up and making his way towards him. That confirms it. They know, and he has to get off this ship as soon as possible. Suddenly, someone grabs his arm and gets him walking briskly through the crowd. You just gonna let him grab you? It was the girl. This way. I know a way to lose him, and any other prying eyes that might be watching. He follows, dumbfounded, as she leads him through back alleys and corridors he didn't even know existed. After a maze of turns, she stops at a docking bay and pulls him into the shadows behind what appear to be caskets. That should be enough. We should be safe here for the time being. She sticks out a hand. Ada! Victor looks dumbfounded at the proffered hand. I know you're a bit of a recluse, but it is customary to shake hands on introductions. Victor hesitantly shakes. What was her name? Ada's hand. Right. Victor, what's going on? Yes, I know who you are, and you are a very capable hacker, but you have pissed off some dangerous people. No. I was careful. There's no way. My employer knows about it, and if he knows, you can bet that Yuqing knows. Your life is in danger, and I'm going to throw you a lifeline. He eyes her suspiciously. Why? Because my employer wants that intel you have. You do have it on you. You weren't foolish enough to leave it on your workstation, I presume. Of course. Victor's cheeks burn red as he realizes the opposite is quite true. No matter, he accesses his Geist and remotely downloads it into his hacking device, deleting the source file and encrypting the received data. Ada watches him knowingly, rolling her eyes. I hate working with cowboys. He smiles back, tapping 2 fingers to his temple. I have it all right here, along with a purge program in case anyone plans anything untoward. Good. Now, get in. Ada opens one of the caskets. It's a goddamn coffin. The type they shoot off into space for military personnel that have died whilst serving. He stares back at Ada in disbelief and intense displeasure. Look, I'm a smuggler, the best of the best. If you want off this ship, it's in there. But don't think too long. You of all people should know that Yuqing agents don't give up hunting anyone that harms their empire easily. Or ever, for that matter. You're going to be a wanted man for a long time. He wished he had drunk a few more glasses of the Bacchanine spirits. He felt like throwing up, but reluctantly climbed in. Ada closes the lid down on him. Nighty-night. As the coffin seals, the sense of helplessness stings at his pride. He's always been able to fend for himself. How did so many know about his raid? As his mind swam with thoughts, he felt himself get drowsy. Why was that? Couldn't it have been the alcohol? Is it a gas? Oh God, it has to be. She's gassed me. Everything fades to black. As if waking from a nightmare, Victor begins piecing together the night before. I got drunk, met a girl, and... Oh God. He sat up with a start, panic setting in. The room was empty, stark. Looking around, there was one door, no windows, no decor, nothing. Taking deep breaths to calm himself, he felt the vibrational hum emanating through the floor. He was on a ship. Nothing as big as Tunguska, but at least the size of a freighter. That meant he was away from the Yuqing agents at least. That much was true. He let out a breath and then instantly held it again as the door slid open. A shadow standing there, watching him. He wasn't sure, but he thought he could see alien eyes glinting at him. Suddenly, the shadow rushed forward, its face an inch from his. His chest hurt. He couldn't breathe. But that wasn't the most surprising thing. He knew his life was moments from ending. He looked into the alien eyes of the shadow, and as it moved into the light, he saw its face. His face. Smiling, just as he had done after his success with the dominant spirit. Like stealing candy from a baby.